everybody. Sorry to look down to get my video monitor here. There I am. Okay, so here I am at the corner of Regina and Marshall. See if we can get that in the sign over there, Regina and Marshall. Right there, which is where it all began. Back for Walk the Block. And here we have an update. It's only fitting that it should start here. Been a little busy lately. I'll explain why. We haven't been in touch in a bit, but let's take a walk down to see what's going on here. Sorry, don't mean to get you dizzy there. So as I said, we've been kind of busy lately, and I'll give you the update on that. This is the first in a series of short videos to give you an update on what's going on. So it started here with Walk the Block. Actually, it started with our property, but again, that's a topic unto itself. Anyway, so here's Walk the Block update. Let's take a look again. Now on this side here of the street, they have higher buildings, so it's only so many floors and up how many units that are applicable to the rental license bylaw, and I'll be updating that one of the other videos. So anyway, let's take a look. So these guys got railings now too, and oh, look at that, these guys, I'm pretty sure they had a railing before, I'm not sure. Looks like that's been there before. So it is a beautiful street. It's a beautiful neighborhood too. And here it is in full swing, just as the students are about to arrive for thinking that they're safe in some of these units. When after what we've discovered, we believe that they're not. And here, I'm not sure if this is applicable to a rental license. I believe it is, because it's less than 4 floors, I believe it is. It's either 3 floors or less, or 4 floors or less. And depending on how many units, what style of building is applicable to a rental unit. So if these are all rentals, they are all applicable to the rental license bylaw, which means that they are to have a rental license prominently displayed at all times in a common area of the unit. It's like a motel or a garage. You are not allowed to operate that business without that license fully up to date and posted, and you're not allowed to remove it without penalty. Now, this is an interesting one, because this is one we're talking about, 49A and 49B. As you can see, they put handrails on the stairs, but they missed the railing across the top. So it's still not the code. But you notice they evicted all tenants, and they have closed it down from rental. So we have been effective. But it also shows that they are not the code still. We have asked for the background data on these properties because 49B is where it all started, and also 53A and 53B. 53A, I'm not sure if they rented it. It was for rent, but it doesn't appear to be rented. It may be. You don't know. But as look at the fence. Is that to code? Is that bylaw compliant even? Any of that structure? Anyway, it is not the building code. It is not compliant, which means it wasn't compliant when it was rented. And it was in 2012, we rented it under a rental agreement with the current landlord at the time, which was overwritten by the city. See, this is a, here, I guess I should go this way. Let's go this way. So where is it? Yeah, there you are. That's it in the background. Oh, sorry. There you go. Let's go that way. So there you go. That's it right there. 49B, the one with the fire hydrant and the fence. Okay. So, okay. So let's see. Oops. Yeah, that's a good shot. Okay. So anyway, 49B. We moved in 2012. Myself and Denise. 2014, we ran into a problem with the landlord, and he reneged on our lease. We had asked for help as disabled people again. At that time, it was Mayor O'Halloran, and it was Melissa Durrell, also an ex-employee of CTV. A lot of ex-employees of CTV are on the regional and local councils and stuff. Got to pay attention, people. Anyway, I wonder if that has anything to do why it never ends up on the news, or should I say the propaganda stations. Anyway, so here we are, and we challenge them to come and take a look at this because it's all public record. Anyway, 2014, we had asked for assistance as disabled people again, and this is about modus operandi. This is about a pattern of behavior, because they say one thing in policy and they do another thing in action. And the biggest thing is that this is, we believe, a made in Waterloo region solution that they came up, because it's regional government that's interfering with the administration of government on all levels, is what it appears to be. And you got to remember, it's regional courthouse, regional police, regional fire, regional municipal enforcement, and it was municipal board that overruled everybody's vote, right? Anyway, you got to pay attention. So we are saying that this has been exposed at what we believe to be business arrangement. How else would you best describe it? But it is not doing what they propose it do, that to the public that it does. They are not protecting the rights of tenants. If anything, they are obstructing the right for the tenant to make their own, like they're obstructing the legal standing of the building to be used in a proper setting, which they claim is landlord-tenant board, but again, that is under the same roof. You want to know why they have legal aid and human rights and all those things under tribunal? It's because they are becoming exposed that for what it is. It is a sham. The legal system in Canada and Ontario is a sham. And if you want a clue, the body that supports the whole thing is called the Law Society of Upper Canada. Upper Canada is when the Queen and the Crown used to rule, and the Crown, in fact, and I challenge any legal scholar to prove this wrong, is that under the current rules, even in this so-called democracy, the Crown can never be found to be acting unlawfully, illegally, or especially criminally. And if a Crown cannot be found to ever be guilty of those things, maybe improperly, you might get improperly, but never unlawfully, illegally, or criminally, then this is not a democracy. And I challenge every agent of the Crown, which is every politician, every legal society, everybody who's elected. You need to fully publish your oath of office, the oath that you swear to take office. Law Society of Upper Canada, you need to publish the oath that the lawyers need to take, because they are not for the people. They protect the Crown, and that's what this exposes. They're using taxpayers' funds. Taxpayers' funds. Oh, sorry, I'm disabled. Taxpayers' funds against taxpayers to obstruct actual evidence and proof that you need to show. So again, here it happened, and that started the whole journey. In 2014, we hired a lawyer in order to get us accessibility with the landlord-tenant board and to represent us. He sabotaged the case to the point where he was fired. He showed up at the hearing for landlord-tenant in order to give me the money back, and I have a receipt for when he was retained. We had left the landlord-tenant board hearing, and the landlord-tenant board, even though he did not have standing for us, took him as standing in order to put a nice neat bow on the file. We were told 4 days before we had to be out that we were evicted because they sent it by mail. I almost lost my life having to cut the stuff out of there myself. They used the police for intimidation again. Nobody protected our rights, and that was what made us homeless for 2 years. And while I was homeless, I had tried to go to the court, tried to go to legal aid, tried to get help, and there's none there because their job is to shut it down and to suppress the truth. Especially in my case when I have a brain injury, and it's because every contact has been recorded because of my digital recording, because of my brain injury. So these properties here are not able to be rented. Oh, somebody does live there. It is rented, is it? Okay, there you go. We need to give notice, I guess, eh? Anyway, there you go, you got proof. It is rented. So I'm wrong. Do you have a rental license in your building? There should be a card up in your house somewhere that shows that it's rented. If it doesn't, it's an illegal rental by the city and the landlord. You need to go on YouTube and look up Marshall Street, the rental scam, because it's all there. You're not safe. You're not safe. There you go. Anyway, here you go. So like they do, what they do is they clear out the tenants that complain and they pretend like everything's okay and go ahead and rent it again when it is anything but okay. What you see, this time we captured it on tape because I actually got recordings from when I tried to do the contacts the last time with Melissa Durrell, with the city, asking for help, and they shut us down. We were waiting, oh yeah, we're gonna be over, we're gonna be in touch. They stalled. They ran interference. They refused to come over and look at it. We had pictures then, but I didn't send it in. But they just kept running us around, same thing as they did this time. The reason why I knew what to do this time is because of what they did the last time. Anyway, the idea is this: the rental license is supposed to keep tenants safe. This is what they say, to keep them safe and make sure that these structures are legal rentals. Because it's not a legal rental, if it doesn't meet minimum standard or building code, it is not a legal or lawful rental. It is not allowed to be rented. Even if portion of the building or that rental unit is not lawful, that portion is not able to be collected rent for. You can get abatement for it. Even, let's say it's a 3-bedroom apartment and the 3rd bedroom is uninhabitable because there's leaks and other stuff. Well, you are able to go and apply for an abatement. Let's say you have bed bugs in 3 of the bedrooms and you have nothing but problems with bed bugs and they were there when you arrived. They're not allowed to rent it till the bed bugs are taken care of. They're not allowed to let you move in there and take on the problem, because then all you got to do is, hey, you get to go to the complaint system. It's an industry. They've turned it into an industry in this Made in Waterloo Region Solution, which is to obstruct and suppress and to control the truth. It is a human rights debacle. They are lying to you. Law Society of Upper Canada, when I was brought into the courthouse, I went to the courthouse to ask for help, and because I asked for the disability coordinator, within 120 seconds was assaulted to the point where I feared for my life because he had my hands above my head. The video was given previously and I was a lot more hysterical at the time because of the psychological effect. But it's all there. What happened? And that was in my journey trying to seek justice when we had testimony of this lawyer before landlord-tenant, which he was not allowed to be part of, especially not representing our interests supposedly. But he said under oath that he was never retained. And I had a receipt that showed otherwise. We went into the courthouse to try and have a JP stop the eviction. Based on that, and based on the fact that we were not properly represented, there was no human rights of help whatsoever. We went for human rights help and they blocked it, just like they are now. This system is fictitious, especially in Waterloo Region, and several incidents that happened to me over the years since then. This is full circle. Because it started with that. It was my seeking justice for what they did to us there that caused me to go to the courthouse, where I was assaulted and almost murdered on the doorstep for asking for help. We had asked for intervention with every contact with Waterloo Regional Police and every contact everywhere for community support, mental health services, a liaise, somebody to be a buffer, and at every point, and I will post those videos, I will show what training they have, which was to antagonize, annoy, and to provoke. Exactly what they did here. They needed to bring cops along? Why? Why? The question is, it's like a MasterCard commercial. How many inspectors does it take to inspect a unit? Especially when they got a signed permission from the landlord in the application 4 applications that are individual applications by one individual applicant, but they're using it as one applicant. They put it all under one roof to hide the inconsistencies between all 4 of these properties, and yet he owns these properties too. This is where his daughter lives. He owns 98A, 98B. He owns 100A, 100B. He owns the White House in between. He owns the yellow apartment building on the corner. He owns the restaurant behind. And they have a development deal. We will be making an update as to what's been going on, but as you can see, here you are. This is June 15th was when they had the order made. It was to be fulfilled by July 30th or July 15th or something. June 15th, and they were given till July 30th, I believe. I'll update that with the actual I'm sorry, I gotta go. I'm sorry. I'll update that with the actual there you go, with the actual thing. But as you can see, here's the state. Here's where we are today after we're on the 41st day since they were supposed to have it fixed. And as I predicted, they've been saying, oh yeah, we just call us, right? Just call us? Is that what it was? Just call us, right? 41 or 42 days from the day it was supposed to be enforced. And there is no enforcement, no change, but they're doing their job, because their job is to obstruct, to harass, to annoy, to assault, because this is on assault. And as I said, nothing's been done. Nothing. Allison Hensall lies on those tapes. You see? That is still, nothing has been done. This, except for this. Notice. Okay, on the kick plate, what's that? Black mold, right? What's all this? Black mold. And even from the ones I did a couple months ago, this is all dry. This has been dry, and this is interesting because we took this off the other day and we noticed something. As you can see, we had this carpet this way. We had taken it off because it had rained, and we hung it up on our clothesline over there. And when we took it off, we noticed something, that we've actually got the 2 years since we've been here like rings in a tree, because we first started going this way. It was lengthwise, and you can see. Whereas lengthwise, where this is new board. This is a brand new board because it covered both times. So this darker part here is because it covered both times. So it covered the first time, which was this, and the second time. So it both went lengthwise, which is why the stain, or which is why I captured that way. But you can see, since we changed it the other way, here's the difference between the first year and the second year. And this is the difference between the second year and the first year. And this is what has been exposed the whole time. But if we look back at the ones that I just did a couple months ago, you will see that this black mold was not this bad. It is in the railings. It is in the fence. You see the top of the fence there? It's in the wood of the fence. It's in the railings here. As you can see, it's clearly right there. It's clearly on this one, especially that big black spot. You can see where it's all over theirs, and it's dripping down the boards. Can you see that? Where the health board was called, and they said they were going to come and take a look at it, and nobody's even contacted. But that's strangely reminiscent of what happened in another jurisdiction of Ontario. And we are talking about Ontario law, right? Here we are. The stairs have still not been touched. Excuse me, I gotta be very careful going up and down here. So we've dealt with this under violation for the last 41 days. And that's not harassment, especially after everything they did. How much misuse and misappropriation of taxpayers' funds, because this should have taken one inspector or two, 1 or 2 times, to come out here and go through the checklist of what is required, not just what we were accusing them of. Because they were here to just say, oh, were we accurate in what we were saying? This is all supposed to be done before he even allows it on the market, and let me remind you. Oh, here, this is interesting. Oh, let me finish. Let me remind you, this is a licensed real estate agent who is in the business of commercial and residential rentals under Commissions Worldwide. He represented himself and gave us his card as Kupel Marcoux with his Kupel Marcoux information, so we thought Commissions Worldwide was a subsidiary or one of his clients. He never represented that he was representing himself as Commissions Worldwide until this situation started coming out 2 years later. Anyway, let's go back to this. So back to their, so again, nothing done with the shed, nothing done with anything. Here we go. The fencing, they did do, oh, actually they didn't do all of it, because look, this is wide open. So they came back and they tried to make it look like they were putting it back together. But I mean, they didn't come to do the violations. We haven't heard from them since. Okay? But I'll let you in on a little problem that they have now. Oh, what a tangle web we weave when we practice to deceive, right? Okay, so here's the problem. This is our fence. Right here, this wooden one. For 100A, this is our fence. And our fence ends, this is our post. The corner post right here with the cap on it, you see that? Right there? That is our corner post for this property line, which is at least 6 inches away from the other fence post. So for 100A to have done his fence, he could have done it, but I imagine it's because he was trying to get, you know, cooperation, and they would have split it half and half because it goes by division property rights bylaw. So when they evaluated this fence, we were just trying to prove that the other property was not in code either, because in fact that's not our fence. This little fence that they included in the infractions, which shows that it is in fact not to code even on of itself, standing on its own, but even more so now that 98B, we have joined a tenants association because we are trying to prevent further harassment and obstruction of justice by the city and other players. So as you see, if that is her fence, 98B was Tom's as well, but we'll talk about Tom in a bit. The back fence, as you can see, at some point, as I said before, somebody made them raise it. We did get the records for this property and we did not see that in there. So maybe they did it voluntarily. But either way, they raised it because of that side of the fence there on their property. And based on property division fence, it must be the same size. So if you see over there, there's a vine hanging on it or something like that, but there is in fact a barrier the same height. And that's all that's required, is a barrier the same height on the opposite side of 98A as it appears. If I was given permission to go on that property, I would be able to go and show you for sure. But even still, from here, it looks like it's the same height. This division property fence, as I stated, was required to be the same height as that fence because it belongs to 98B, not to us. That was my argument justification for why this guy stopped, and as you can see, he was matching the same height for division property fence. And they narrowed it down to the last common denominator because what suited them and the landlord, because we now have interesting evidence that has been revealed. Well, let's go back. Here's his other properties. He owns the restaurant, this whole corner, which is responsible for the backfill for the property, for the parking lot. So how long has this relationship, cozy relationship between them been going on? Because that is clearly the people who put on the covering is responsible for backfill and drainage, or shared costs anyway, and this is certainly incomplete. Quite a bit. This is a scam on the people of Waterloo, on the taxpayer of Waterloo. This is a fraud going back years. Either way, it needs to be investigated because, again, this is not to level, because there's level right there with the parking lot, the lower land parking lot. They're allowed to drain to the low point here, but they're not, that's not allowed to be a lake or standing water like it is. And it's because of this here that this happens. But the problem is there's supposed to be a process that is in place, and they are deliberately, well, actually, sorry about the business, whether by error, omission, or deliberate, doesn't matter. The fact that it exists and it is obstructing the rights of tenants and legally paying taxpayers, legally operating landlords, legally operating property management companies, and others. They are misusing, appropriating funds from the revenues of the city because they're doing multiple things that are not serving the city's good. They are only there to be obstructive and harassing, etc. And totally non-productive, because here we are 42 days later with nothing done. Except for continued harassment. We've had no reasonable enjoyment. And here, let's take a look at this porch now. Because the last time I showed it, this is the black mold, and you can see it's dripping, it's going down that board now. You see how it's coming from the planks, and it's making its way down the board? The rails are a lot more infected. This is not paint, people. This is black mold that the city and the region have been notified of. It is all through that structure. We believe it started with the roof of that garage over there, because as you can see, the black that's coming off there, and they replaced part of that roof. But if they check the spores, I bet you any money it's connected to the top of that garage, which the landlord also owns. It spread from the top of that garage to this deck here, to this owner when it was privately owned. And nothing was done about it. That's why they waited till he owned both properties to change the roof. He bought all properties, and it's really interesting because it's good. Well, we're going to lay out our landlord-tenant board thing. But again, this is a registered real estate agent who knows the rules, who is required to know the rules and operate by the rules anyway. So Real Estate Commission of Ontario, this is a verbal request under Accessibility Ontarians with Disabilities Act for you to do an investigation, because this isn't the first one that's done this to us. The last landlord that we went to, and we went to the city to check to see if it was bylaw allowed, and it said it was. From the documentation we got before we rented the place, it said everything was legal. This landlord also put this place forward as a legal rental, a lawful rental. We found out, again, almost 2 years later after paying rent, and I even ran a studio downstairs even longer than we rented there, this apartment that we had on the main floor. But again, same thing happened when the city and landlord and tenant got involved. Exactly the same modus operandi. They used the system to shut everything down, to suppress it. It also goes to, I had been volunteering at Ray of Hope, playing guitar, and at Sterling Mennonite Church playing guitar, until I was assaulted. I think I did that, can't remember how many years, 5 or 6 years, maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, at Ray of Hope. And it was at least 3 or 4 at the church, Sterling Mennonite Church. I was assaulted by 2 of the staff as a person with a disability trying to use disabled washroom. I was assaulted and demeaned and abused by 2 of the staff, because they were not properly trained in how to deal with persons with disabilities. And the problem is this: even after years of association and my assistance with them, as a person with a disability, I tried to have something done, and Denise tried to follow up as well with Lutherwood, who runs that, as well as the other people in Waterloo region, and we were shut down. When I was assaulted at the police station, or at the courthouse, trying to access, because I was asked to come down there by the person who was claiming to be this disability coordinator, and when they asked what I was doing there, I was saying I'm there to see this disability coordinator. 120 seconds later, I'm fighting for my life, and then I'm charged criminally and put through the system with a lawyer for 9 months, which doesn't do anything to change venue. First thing he should have done was change venue. He did nothing to assist me whatsoever. Why is he not allowed to help me do a police services complaint? Because I was asking him to help me complain on behalf of the officers, because they're obviously not trained properly. And then we find out later that the guy who assaulted me was in his training as an auxiliary officer under supervision of the guy who was 1 foot away from him. And all I was doing was responding to a sign that they had posted saying, if you have any questions and need assistance, please ask for the disability coordinator or administrator or something like that. Anyway, it says if you're disabled, you need help, ask. And what I was doing was I came out and it was summer. I was tired. I had emptied my pockets because I took my stuff. I was wearing my track pants. I pulled my two hands out with my stuff in my hands. He asked me to put it in the tray. I said, excuse me, I don't feel comfortable with that. And I asked him, is there any reason why you can't just look at what I've got and pat me down? And he automatically became threatening. And like I said, 120 seconds later, I've got my arms above my head, which makes it hard for me to breathe. And I can't breathe, and I'm asking him to let me go, and he's not. He tackled me out 2 doors onto the landing outside the courthouse, which is all captured on film, by the way, but they miraculously weren't able to get any of it, except for this little, the one that we did get. They suppressed what happened at the Waterloo Regional Police as well. This lawyer did not defend me whatsoever. He did his job. He is an employee of the Law Society of Upper Canada. Even after the court, for no reason, dropped him as my lawyer. I was made to defend myself coming up to trial because I wasn't just going for their pat little answer, and I wasn't giving up the fact that, excuse me, I was the one who was wronged here. They tried to give easy way out, stuff like that, but that's not the facts. And I was sitting there saying, no, I'm sorry, but that's not, I will not cop to something that I did not do. Anyway, so they made me do my own lawyer, and when we got to court, we got to trial the first time. They're making me do it. I go to complain to the judge right away, and the judge says, sorry, but we didn't know you're disabled. Think about that for a second. This is Waterloo Regional Courthouse, a disability court that was specifically set up to deal with persons with disabilities. And this judge's first comments were, we weren't aware that you're disabled. So I had a lawyer for 9 months, or something like that. It may have been longer than that, supposedly representing my interests, and yet he didn't file anything that showed that I was disabled, or what my needs were as a disabled person. Well, why would he do that? Well, because it's about notwithstanding. A disabled person, such as myself, does not have standing. We are allowed to hire a lawyer that works within the system, and that lawyer or representative is given standing. That is the proper application of the notwithstanding law. That is why this applies to everybody. And they say in the Constitution, root word con, they say in the Constitution that we have the right to security of person. Well, what do you need for security of person? You need your health. That's done by tribunal. You need your employment. That's done by tribunal. You need your legal rights as a person with a disability. That's done by tribunal. You need your legal rights as a tenant to have a home and security in that home and security of person in that home, especially when you make a legal contract with somebody that is supposed to be binding, even if that person not only misrepresents to you, because he misrepresented to us, he misrepresented 98B, he misrepresented 100B. Then he got away with it for almost 2 years. January 19th, 2019, he was made to sign a document where he was made to give individual applications on each property. In each property, he gave his absolute permission for them to come and inspect whatever they needed to. We have Alison Hensall show up here and start claiming that she doesn't have the right. We invited her to get to, and he had to clear it with the tenants. He didn't have to because we were inviting them here. Instead, she showed and demonstrated what happens when you are adversarial. Because she was trying to show that somewhere, I guess that's demonstrating that somehow we were being adversarial. Denise never was. We never were. We've been asking for this to be dealt with, and look, this has been dealt with because Wednesday we are to go before the Landlord-Tenant Board. Our material, we feel we have enough in order to show what's been going on here, but we don't have representation, and you know, nobody to show us how this goes with what, you know, how many copies are we supposed to have, who's helping us with the cost of this, you know, all these questions. Because again, everybody's in turmoil. We reach out to the human rights people, we reach out to everybody, and everybody just doesn't know what the hell's going on. They're just going, no, go away, and that's it. Because that's Douglas Ford's answer to everything. Because they have to not get caught. When I was in that disability court and he claimed not to know I was disabled, I looked at the judge and I said, "I'm sorry, Your Honor, I know I've got a brain injury, but I have been legally disabled since 2004. To wit, I have been made to file a federal income tax return and a provincial income tax return as a person with a disability. To wit, I have received benefit as a person with a disability. To wit, I have had multiple disability certificates filed with the Income Tax Service to prove my disability over those years, because 2014 was 10 years. That's at least 2 certificates. In my case, it happened to be 3 because there was an overlap. Anyway, and they're challenging people with certificates now because any conflict they make money off of. That's the difference. Any legal representation, including if you go hire a private lawyer for private anything, if the Crown has any wrongdoing, that's why it takes longer, costs more, and they cover up what the Crown or anybody else is doing wrong within the legal system. It happened with Walkerton. Walkerton, they made it look good on paper. He said so in testimony. They trained me how to make it look good on paper. People died. Denial, the whole bit. Wetlaufer. What happened there, and I'm reaching out to everybody who was affected by Wetlaufer, we need to get a public, no lawyers. Legal advice, yes, but we need to put this together ourselves and challenge the Crown, because nobody else will. They will not allow it to happen unless we do it ourselves as a groundswell of support from people. Wetlaufer, what happened there is obvious. Each institution that employed her went ahead and just covered their own butt. They found out what was going wrong with her, and they didn't want it on their insurance or their reputation, and they legally, quietly put it away and told her to move along. And this happened with every single point that happened with her, and apparently, and I haven't been following it. Don't have to, because I know I've been experiencing this for myself for the last 15 years or whatever it is, since 2004. Documented at every level, every government, because it's not the government, it's a con. It's not withstanding. Each of those things that you need for security of person is done by tribunal. You cannot bring it to a court. So if that's the case, then where is your security of person? Especially if they're allowed to do something like this to you. He was is a legally certified real estate agent with Real Estate Commission of Ontario. Certified. He works for a reputable commercial firm, which he gave me the card of when we did this deal back in 2017, May. As a matter of fact, we could prove that he did absolutely no due diligence because he had just purchased the property. He did no due diligence, and he still didn't, even when he was facing these orders. Because you saw the date that they came, he brought the people with him. He's supposed to do that before he even enters it for rent. And here we stand. It is not rentable. We had to move most of our stuff down here because this is really not safe. But again, that's about private enjoyment. And this is also to block people breaking into our shed. We are on the verge of having our, technically we could have our insurance canceled because of the actions of this landlord. And what happened? So after 2 years of him misrepresenting to us that it was a legal and lawful rental, collecting rent the whole time, which is unlawful by the city's own standards and their own licensing bylaw, he was found out January 19, 2019. So what does the city do? They accommodate him in his misrepresentation. In the 4 single applications that he signed for each of these properties, if there's not more, we're not sure, but we do know for these 4, I have now I got through Freedom of Information, the actual copies of the files on these properties, and it is amazing what we found out and Shamir Maida admitted that they do not actually inspect these properties. So it's the same as the Boeing 737. Well, they said it was safe. And that's why if you look at our videos again, look at them again, and this time when you see them, and we're going to post the one for the fire department now too, because even the fire department was surprised. The fire department was surprised. Again, regional fire department, regional police, regional municipal inspections. We have a Mayor Jaworski, who is the mayor of Waterloo, but at the same time sits on regional council as our representative with regional council. That is a conflict of interest. Maybe it's because they're hiding the sharing agreement, where what they mean by downloading services means you just don't get them anymore. And by not getting them, well, we get to get conflict happening where people have to apply for applications and hire representatives. And look at how many paralegals are out there now. When the bottom line is, who's the biggest landlord in Canada, in Ontario, anywhere? It's the Crown. So it's very simple. How many inspectors does it take to do this? Well, misappropriation of funds, because they didn't need that many police. They should have brought one inspector, maybe one manager, maybe a couple times. And if they weren't partial, because again, all they looked at when they were here is anything I wrote down or sent them a picture on. And yet there's stuff that they pointed out, including Alison Henshaw was mentioning about the mortar on the side of the building, which is a building code thing. Plus, if you look at the order, there's building code infractions. So it's obvious what's happening here. Just show you what's going on here. So this is the 98B. We are now tenant association. So as you can see, doing the best we can with what we got. But as you can see, oh, look at that, the fence. It's not totally enclosed, but as you can see on this side, it is definitely 6 feet. And actually now you can see on that side there is another fence that matches this height. So 98A with division property fence bylaw is correct in appearance. It's 6 foot all the way around. That's why, again, as I said, here you are. This is his property line as determined back then. I'm sure this one's determined by GPS now, because these fences were put in a lot longer ago than that. So as you can see, this used to be the same height as that fence. That's why there's this post. And they were either ordered, and which means that they kept it out of the record, but that's not unusual because the record was incomplete, woefully incomplete, especially in this age of actually having electronic record keeping. So as you can see, this is also 6 feet, non-secured. And then we get over to this one, which again is the same as this one. So when this came to 6 feet, that automatically made this one become 6 feet. Should have, even before Commissions Worldwide bought it. And as you can see from this side, this is a fascia board just covering the fact that there's a fence there. That's because there should have been a tie-in here. He was probably hoping to do a tie-in for a wooden fence and do the wood all the way up to match this one. As you can see, 6 feet. So this is City of Waterloo Province and Municipality. Picking the pockets of taxpayers to obstruct and deny justice to legally operating tenants, to legally operating landlords, to legally operating property management companies. And the bylaw was designed to catch people like Theo Papadopoulos, Eugene Papadopoulos, the owners of Commissions Worldwide Inc., and you know, people who wanted to skirt the system, to cheat the system. Because again, for 2 years they did not pay their fees. For 2 years, while unlawfully and illegally collecting rent at a place that they misrepresented as a legal rental, 1 of 4. Then they put in an application on January 19th, which will be posted to this page as well, that shows clearly that he lied. There's a legal declaration that he's to make on, which is an interesting thing because it's not actually declaring under oath, but it is determined as a legal declaration under the Municipal Act. Whereupon he states, and I will read it later verbatim what it says, but he basically gave his permission for any and all inspections for these properties at any and all times. And that he was going to secure the permission of the tenants to let them know. So here it goes. We will update you on what the actual thing is, but if you are a renter within the confines of Waterloo, the City of Waterloo, and your building is, I believe it's 3 or 4 floors, you can go check it out on the website as far as rental license bylaw. I believe I put a link up on one of the pages, and if I didn't, I will, to the actual bylaw where it states what kind of class buildings they are. I believe it's for low-rise buildings, so anything 3, 4 floors. It might be even more, who knows. But anyway, like I said, I will update what that is, and we'll provide the link. Again, we're not lawyers, but we're showing you what's what and how to, you know, document. Anyway, the way that the law states is that anything with that is able to be under the rental license, so that'd be anything smaller buildings and no new construction, I believe. So if it's an older house, even if it's a single floor with multiple units rented out of it, like a bungalow or something, like one of these places over here, like 101, if it's something like that, where it used to be, this place used to have every six rooms rented out at $500 or $600 a month. With the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rooms at $600 a month, and the landlord, the landlord lived in the basement, I believe, and he might have even rented one more room in the basement later. But anyway, that's why it was set up like a rooming house, and that's why you're going to see the fire department. Sorry, the fire department was surprised at what was in there because they had never actually been in there. What they did, it's like the 737. They just write down the paper and say, hey, it looks good, right? And they go, yeah, okay, no problem. Pay the money. It's good for me. And they went to lengths to cover up for this landlord because it certainly, they proved themselves that it's not to code, including 98B is not to code. We also have other evidence on 98B, which will be forthcoming, but we are now Tenants Association. The interesting, well, it's not interesting, but the main reason why we have not been able to do anything lately is because the bikes are covered. And the reason why the bikes are covered is because there is a human cost to this misrepresentation by both the landlord and especially this administration. And let me remind you, if you're talking about responsibility, here it goes. It's the federal government, provincial government, municipal government, city government, and tenants and landlords and property owners that are all responsible to make sure the minimum code is maintained. So you are not going to pass the buck, Mr. Ford and anybody else, because guess what? This is not PC, this is not liberal, this is not even NDP. Because what I've got to show you is that they are all equal opportunity suppressors. They all do their job because the system is not broken. It is working exactly the way it's designed to. And that's the scariest thing of all. But we need to join forces. We need to end this. And we will be going to tribunal on Wednesday. We will be bringing evidence forward of the collusion between the city and that, because the landlord signed a receipt for 98B saying that he paid the rent during the time he was not allowed to collect it. I have copies of every check that was paid because we paid him rent up front, which he was unlawfully allowed to collect, which means, and you're only allowed to lawfully under Residential Tenancies Act collect the equivalent of 1 month's rent to hold as a security deposit for last month's rent. He in effect has two years and a bit of prepaid rent, and we still do not have the minimum standard that was required in order for him to rent it in the first place, even after the infractions. So, sorry, I'm getting you dizzy, right? So anyway, we'll update you with the next one. How long has this one been? I can't tell. 48 minutes? Yeah, it's long enough. Okay, anyway, oh, yeah, sorry, the main point. The human cost. John Thomas Lichty was my friend and neighbor. He was the guy who, on one of the videos, you hear him ride in on the bike pretty loudly on his Harley. He is no longer with us. He died July 18th in the hospital from complications that started with a heart attack. That is because of the pressure of what was going on here. The landlord, Theo Papadopoulos, Commissions Worldwide, even though they promised a fenced-in backyard and never delivered, and actually we got proof that he ever intended to deliver, he had used it as a means to come over because Tom was forced to, well, he went by the name Tom, but anyway, Tom was forced to use the front yard as most of the thing for the dogs because work and for his roommate, and just the way it worked for them, and the tie-ups, because there wasn't really any way to have the dogs out back safely during that time. So Theo, every time he'd come to collect the rent, would use it as a means to harass John Thomas Lichty, and annoy him. And he used to come over all the time and tell me, like, we used to have discussions about, and I would say, why would you put up with it? But anyway, doesn't matter. The point is that the city, we have uncovered that the city, especially with regard to 98B, has had this lax attitude. And just, again, I mean, look at the inspections. Judge for yourself, because what should have happened is they come in here with the list blindly and just go top to bottom and what fits and what doesn't on each property. And matter of fact, the landlord was required to do that first. And even when it came to fire inspection, he didn't. Most reputable landlords, once they buy a property, will go to a company like Becker Fire Services or something like that, or any of the fire services, A1 Fire Services, whatever they call themselves. There's a ton of them, where you ask them to come out and assess your building, and they know their stuff. And matter of fact, they're the ones they had to have install the stuff, because that's the only ones who can install it. So when we put up the video of the fire inspection, you're going to see these inspectors come in with these workers. And it shows the reason why is because they're the ones who install it. But the landlord, if they're reputable, such as Grand River Property Management, when they get a new property, they would go and they would have them inspected. And they would do an assessment for fire, building code, whatever. Anything that needed to be corrected, they would make sure it was corrected, because it says in these documents when you sign them that you legally declare that the information you are giving is true. And in this case, he misrepresented to 4 tenants, at least 4 tenants, that they were lawful rentals, because they were not. They are currently under application from January 2019. At least the 3 properties, 98B, 100A, and 100B, are unlawful rentals during that time, which we could prove. And again, the city doesn't even want to answer that question if he's allowed to collect rent. They run interference, and their job is to be impartial, right? To determine the legal standing of the building as it is inapplicable of the building code. They said right in the permission, the bylaw, municipal building, fire, and I forgot the other one. Property standards, I guess. Anyway, I'll read it to you what it says in the next video. This is just coming on an hour. That's enough for now. Anyway, I'm also putting out a tribute video to explain more about John Thomas Lichty. And the fact is that they laid the groundwork for this landlord to be able to do this for the 2 years that he got away with it, and especially once they found out the way they've been acting. They should have put a stop to this immediately. They should have been impartial, even to the point where they controlled the health board from coming out and preventing this thing about black mold, which is a health hazard to children. Look at this. Do you see the floor? Do you see? That's not just dirt, that's black mold, because it stays behind. And I defy the city to come and prove us wrong. You know, these cuts to services, and especially legal aid and representation, that's because they have more and more problems with people like me, who it's my legal right as a person with a disability to document because of my memory problems. That's why in their court of law, it was thrown out after I was assaulted and abused. And you try to go to any part of the system to try and have this addressed, and nobody is there to address it, because their job is to suppress. Matter of fact, Prime Minister Trudeau, you filed a false declaration with the Human Rights Committee on the rights of persons with disabilities, because you forgot to mention that you control every agency that represents any person with a disability. Again, it's notwithstanding. What is it, a 2-line little clause in the Constitution that puts con in Constitution? Because as a person with a disability, I had notwithstanding. It was the judges and the lawyers and the Crown that had standing. I'm just a prop in their play. And if you look at what's going on in that courthouse, that's exactly what's happening. Medical, same thing. You're just a prop in the play. And when it came to the death of John Thomas Lichty, they pulled a wetlaw again. And the wetlaw is they just cover up all the wrongdoing. There's nothing to look at here, folks. Please move along. Make it look good on paper, just like Walkerton, just like Wetlaufer, and this involves the coroner of Ontario. Again, regional coroner. When wrongful accusations or wrongful whatever, you know, they've got their act down. This is the last day of Buskerfest in Waterloo, and the biggest act of all is right here. The biggest act of all against taxpayers. You may ask yourself, why does this concern you? Well, like I said, they came with, well, I haven't done the count, but I think it was like 3 officers, Waterloo Regional Police officers. They came with 2 or 3 fire department, like at least 1 supervisor and 1 inspector from fire department. They came with a manager from municipal enforcement and the enforcement officer and other people that came out that just the one time. Shamir Maida and the fire department came out for the original one. I think it was June 10th. It was supposed to be June 11th, but they had to postpone or something to the 13th because of rain or something like that. I had suggested that, and either way, I was not able to be there because they knew by bringing the police it would have been provoking, and I would not be able to be there, which is why they brought them, to run interference. But you could see Alison Hensall lie on tape. You can hear Shamir Maida lie on tape in real time. That's your tax dollars, because instead of all those people that they billed to come here 3 or 4 times, whatever it was, and they still have to come back to do to check it, which they haven't done. They just dropped everything because we asked for them to show proper proof of insurance and workers' compensation, which you're required to do if they're coming here to do work. Especially, that was a requirement of our insurance company. Because if somebody gets injured on here, we are partially reliable, or maybe partially liable if we don't check to make sure that they've got their own coverage. That is a legal requirement. Any reputable contractor that does it to code, and when they say to sufficient standard, they mean minimum code. And because there was a challenge with that, they stopped all contact, because they expect the same thing's going to happen like happened in 2014, which is the system will take care of it. They will evict us for any reason. I expect we're going to be evicted, even though we prepaid our rent, even though we are in full compliance of every part of our part of the agreement and legal contract binding us to a tenancy, even though we did everything right, and all we did was fight for our rights. All we did was ask to be represented. And all we've been done is be harassed and annoyed and assaulted, and to the point where Tom lost his life. John Thomas Lichty died of a heart attack because of the pressures applied because of the last 2 years and what happened in the last few months. And we've been focused on that, and even just trying to navigate that joke of a system. This system is here for one thing and one thing only: to rape and pillage and support the crown in their criminality. This is not a democracy. And you're fooling yourself. You believe politicians are supposed to lie? Trudeau, you lie all the time. You are the Queen's Prime Minister, not ours. You tied the Justice Minister and the Attorney General's hands because the same way as Mr. Jaworski tied the hands of representative of City of Waterloo and the regional municipality of Waterloo by sitting on both boards. Because it's about the sharing agreement and keeping the lid on the fact that you are not getting the services you are being charged for, and they are raising more business through conflict. This is the industry of poverty and suppression. And with what I've been able to collect over the last few years, even with healthcare, and let me ask you something: people with autism, autistic kids, that's a health problem, right? So wouldn't that come under healthcare? And the problem with healthcare is this: they don't do whole person healthcare anymore. They think because your son or daughter has autistic or whatever traits that they're able to pull them out of the regular full service healthcare and put them off in a corner and say, well, you got to pay for this, you got to pay for that, and all this other stuff, and in order to pay for that or even apply for benefits, you have to pay us to pay for that. And then you got to hire somebody who's there to drag your heels while you pay for stuff. Sorry, old age, that's like autism, isn't it? That's just a condition of living. Whole person care.
You know, do no harm, whole person care. Let's talk mental health, shall we? You part out people in order to charge more and yet not provide any proof of doing anything that you promise other than to charge more and to keep the conflict going. Like I said, it's time for us to have a real conversation, because Mr. Trudeau and all levels of government, I challenge you. You are liars. Queen Elizabeth, you lie. This is not a democracy. This is the Law Society of Upper Canada, and everything protects that. I've been in your court system. I've been through your human rights, and Doug Ford has told you what he's doing with those, and now you have the reason why. The reason why is because they're scared crapless. Again, all the people with disabilities out there, if you feel that you have not been given a voice, you need to speak up. Independent living centers. I went to Independent Living Center as a person with a disability, asking them for assistance to help me fill out a police services complaint on behalf of myself and the officers, because the officer's not properly trained. I've worked in security and training before. I know what the problem was. And when we discovered what happened afterwards, this is a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy. This is a fact. And you want to know about the legal system in Canada or anywhere in this Commonwealth? You look at my case that is public record in the Waterloo Regional Courthouse. And I challenge news agencies and whoever else to talk to my caregiver. Because again, through this whole thing, you keep going that I've got some sort of mental problem, because how dare I keep telling the truth and not shut the hell up. And what you do is you coerce other people into doing that, because if they don't do that, they don't get the services. So it doesn't take long to have people trained to go along with the way you want it, right? That's the Made in Waterloo Region solution.